Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 146. 146 is a good number, and I titled the name of this week's episode, Amnesia Mode equals off, Insanity Mode equals on, Amnesia Mode Diaries Week 8, because as you all know, I talked about in the last episode that I'm doing my craziest challenge ever. We're going to talk about that, and I'm going to be off to the races here very soon. So, announcements. I just wanted to let everybody know that I am doing a Christmas sale. If you all know, earlier in the year at authorlevelup.com, I implemented direct sales on my website. And so you can now purchase books directly from me if you like to do that. And what I'm offering is a 20% off thank you coupon, and it is TrueFan2020. Coupon code TrueFan2020. I decided to extend this until the end of the year. So for any book that you buy from me directly, use that coupon code to get 20% off your order. And that is for any writing book that is currently in my catalog. I will be bringing the same functionality to michaellaran.com sometime early in 2021. So as a thank you for a wonderful year, feel free to have writing books 20% off using the coupon code TrueFan2020 at authorlevelup.com/books. All right, wins for the week. So I finished Amnesia Mode pretty strong. You know, Amnesia Mode just isn't the same as Beast Mode. Hasn't been as popular. My passion it's been pretty high, but I'm ready to move on to something different. And so I finished it strong, but the win for the week for me this week was that I finished Amnesia Mode, because today is the final day. It's Sunday as I record this. I finished it with a streak of 12 days of profitable Amazon ads, like the 12 days of Christmas. 12 days of profitable Amazon ads, meaning that I made more in royalties for the books that I advertised than I spent, which was really, really cool. Definitely a lot of the strategies that I put into place are finally starting to bear some fruit. It took about 6 or 7 weeks or so, but things are profitable, and I'm really happy about that because now I can figure out how I can start scaling it. So definitely was a win for the week. Now, lesson learned this week. You know, somebody on my YouTube channel asked me, Michael, why do you have such an aversion to traditional published contracts? And I had to reply, and I said, you know, let me back up a little bit. I did a video on my YouTube channel last week, and it was about Q&A. And I think someone had asked about traditional publishing contracts, and they're like, Michael, why are you an indie? Would you ever do like an agent or a traditional published deal? And my answer effectively was, it would take a whole hell of a lot for me to do that, just knowing what I know about traditional publishing contracts, law, and copyright law. And the person kind of asked, you know, why is that? They asked in the comments, you know, why do you feel that way? Can you elaborate? And so I replied, and I tried not to give too cynical of an answer, but I think I gave a cynical answer. And the person was like, oh, wow, why is that? Well, to start, here is why. You know, and honestly, I have nothing against traditional publishers, and I have nothing against literary agents. I think that they're running a business. That business is what it is. That's a certain business model. I'm running a business. I think they understand that. And so when two businesses come together for what should be mutual benefit, there's got to be some push and pull. There's got to be some tug in tugs. I can't think of another word for tugging. So you know what I'm trying to say. There's got to be a meeting of the minds, so to speak. And the cards are so stacked against authors in these arrangements that it's really, really scary. And I said in the video that traditional publishing or contracts in general can destroy your career if you don't know what you're doing. And they're like, oh, those are really strong words. And I said, yeah, they are strong words. Let me give you some examples. First and foremost, what happens if you sign away all the rights to your novel and then 10 to 20 years down the road realize, hey, this publisher isn't doing what I want them to do. I want the rights to my book back. Well, you just signed away your book. You can't get it back. Unless you have $100,000 to pay a lawyer to get that back. You signed a contract because you were so excited about traditional publishing. A publisher's kind of finally going to be behind me, and then it didn't turn out the way you wanted to turn out, and you're kind of screwed. That's one way. Second way is a do not compete clause. A lot of traditional publishing contracts have in there that you cannot release any work that competes with the publisher. If you read that narrowly and read it how it's intended to read, then it's very possible that you cannot release any more books under that pen name for the duration of your contract with that publisher unless you release more books. So that puts a hampering on your output. And as a self-published writer, the biggest thing that you have is that you have speed. You can put a book to market without having to worry about bureaucracy. You lose that if you don't negotiate that clause out of your contract. All right. Other things here, and this is the big one. And those two, you can work on those. Those are things that you can probably negotiate. But the one that really scares the hell out of me, and this is one that I don't know anybody who thinks about this. I'm like an alien, okay? But it's really scary. And this is the sort of thing that makes headlines. And that is, what happens if you sign a contract with a traditional publisher today, all right? And they're fantastic. They do a good job. They take care of your cover. There's good people at the company who, they do what they say they're going to do. They're responsive to emails. They send you the royalties on time, and you never have any indication that anything's wrong. All right. So you sign a deal with a publisher that's cool. Okay. That's what you want, right? All right. So what happens if that publisher falls on hard times and they go bankrupt? Or what happens if that publisher is so cool that they're doing such a great job that they get gobbled up or acquired by another publisher? And then what happens if all of a sudden the new publisher that takes the reins to your intellectual property stops responding to your emails? They stop sending you your royalty checks. They stop doing anything and everything that the other publisher did that was so cool, right? What happens? Well, what happens is what's in the contract. And sometimes what's in the contract doesn't actually, has nothing to do with it. The case I'm thinking of, and this is something that I feel like this type of case comes up every 6 or 7 years or so. It gets into the headlines and people start paying attention to it. Is this case that's going on right now with the Star Wars novelists? I think it's Alan Dean Foster or Dean Allen Foster, and a bunch of people that did novelizations for the Star Wars movies, and how when Disney took over LucasArts, they stopped paying these novelists and they have no idea how much money they're owed. That stuff is really, really scary because Disney's going to do what Disney's going to do. If they don't want to pay, they're not going to pay. And what are you going to do? You're going to get a lawyer to go after Disney? I mean, come on. That sort of stuff is really, really scary. There was another case with Tess Gerritsen. I think it was back in 2012 with her book Gravity, where I think she had done a film deal with a Hollywood, like a Hollywood studio. And then that studio got acquired by some big company. I forget what the name of the company was. I won't say that. But basically, they ended up taking, it was either the screenplay or something, but they basically took what the prior studio had developed under contract with Tess Gerritsen, made a movie about it, and this was Gravity with Sandra Bullock, and just basically didn't pay Tess Gerritsen because they said, well, the contract doesn't apply because blah, 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 blah. And she got screwed, literally. And she wrote about this publicly. You can look it up. And she went to court and fought it and lost in court, So these are the sort of things where it's like you have to learn how to see around a corner, and you really have to weigh what you're going to get with the potential downfall. So again, I'm not saying anything negative against traditional publishers. I'm just saying as an author, you have to be a business person and be savvy. And so I posted an article, if anyone wants to read it. It was on the Passive Voice. He got it from somewhere else about this Star Wars issue right now. And I want people to read that And I want them to be very afraid. And I want them to think about that when you start thinking about signing your rights away to a publisher. Because in a perfect world, you want your book to be successful, right? And if it is successful, you need to be thinking about the pitfalls and the things that are going to come back to bite you in the butt if you're not careful. And so that's why I say, if you're going to do a traditional publishing deal, okay, but you got to be tough and you have to understand law. If you are not tough, you don't understand law, and you're not willing to spend at least $100,000 on a lawsuit, I don't recommend it. That's just, again, I know I went long on this, but people were asking me about this, and I said, I just got to tell it like it is. I might be one of the only people out there that's saying this right now, other than Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush, maybe some other folks. But copyright law is critical to understand as a writer. If you don't understand copyright law, you should not be signing contracts until you do. Anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox on that. Now, idea of the week. So idea of the week. This is an interesting one. I don't know if there's someone out there that's working on this or that could do it, or if there's some way you could even, I don't know. This is just an idea. I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks. So I'm in the process of coming up with a new urban fantasy series right now. And I've been doing some like market intelligence to figure out what the cover should potentially look like. So I've been on Pinterest, I've been on Amazon, I've been on all sorts of places just kind of looking at urban fantasy covers and looking at the ones that are successful and figuring out why they're successful. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if there was some sort of artificial intelligence app that used computer vision where you basically put a cover, like you take some best-selling cover, you download an image of it, and then you feed the image into this machine, and then it goes off on Amazon, and it crawls Amazon and Kobo or Pinterest or Google Images or wherever, and it finds images that are similar to it. And I thought that would be interesting, wouldn't it? So like say I want an urban fantasy with a male character on it, and I want feed the image to the AI or the app or whatever it is, and then it goes off and it finds images that are similar to that, or images that it thinks are similar to that. And then you can look at them and compare them, and that would save you hours of work. And that could potentially be something that you could give to your cover designer and say, okay, I like this image from your portfolio. Here are some other images in the genre that look like that. I thought that would be interesting. It'd be something that would save me a lot of work. It takes me a lot of hours to figure out what I want on my cover, just because there's so much you have to dig through. And so I thought that'd be kind of a cool idea if that's possible. So topic of the week. So I wanted to talk about Amnesia Mode. This is the final week of Amnesia Mode. And I wanted to talk also about how the research for this new series is going. So real quick, Amnesia Mode. So I wanted to just debrief with some of the things that I learned and some of the successes that came out of it. Because while this was a shorter mode and it didn't get as, it wasn't as popular as Beast Mode, because people love when I'm in Beast Mode. They love me seeing me write a ton and really quickly. The marketing piece, I don't talk about marketing as much, and so I think my audience just is not as interested in it. But there were a lot of really great things that came out of this that I think are going to set me up really well for 2021. And the first was relearning copywriting. So I said earlier that copywriting, I think, is one of the most important skills that I can learn, just me personally, in 2021 that will help me make more money. It's something that doesn't cost me anything other than maybe, buying a few books here and there. And it's something that I can use to make my book descriptions better, to make my Amazon ads better. Just overall, it just has my email marketing. I mean, there's just so many benefits that being a good copywriter can have in your writing life. And so I read about 7 to 8 copywriting books. Some of them I had read before, but I read 7 to 8 copywriting books, took copious notes, and I really feel like I learned something, and I feel like I leveled up my knowledge and my execution of copywriting. And there were 2 books in particular, one that I had read before and one that I didn't read before, that I felt really helped me just kind of take things to the next level. And the book that I did not read before that I thought was fantastic was Write Copy That Sells by Ray Edwards. It's a book, you can get it on Amazon. It's fairly inexpensive. And he just had a way of breaking down copywriting in a way that I just have never seen anyone do. And he broke it down in such a way that was practical. Because I feel like there's a lot of copywriting resources out there, but they're kind of fluffy and airy. Oh, you got to have this and you got to have that. And it just doesn't, it's not applicable. And this is one of the few books that I read that was instantly applicable to my situation. And I was able to start breaking things down and actually get some results, on my Amazon ads and my book descriptions and things like that. And so I would highly recommend that book to anyone who's interested in that. And then the second book that I read this one before, but it was just helpful to reread again. And that was How to Write Fiction Sales Copy by Dean Wesley Smith. Because fiction sales copy, there is an art to it. There is a certain way that you can approach it. And if you don't know what that is, then you're possibly writing book descriptions that are summarizing the book. And if you look at the best-selling writers out there right now, and when I say best-selling writers, I mean self-published writers. Traditional publishers really don't always do the best job with book descriptions. But the best-selling self-published writers right now, they're doing things with their book descriptions that work wonders. So what are those things? And so this book does a really good job of taking this approach to fiction writing. So that was a pretty good level up for me. And then just with copywriting, just kind of synthesizing all of my knowledge, I actually built a tool that I can use to help me build better book descriptions every time. And it's really just a simple Excel tool. And what it is I basically have a lot of different book description styles in there, and I have each of those styles broken down into a series of steps. And so I can say, okay, I need to write a book description where the hero is blah, 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 all right? Or it's the hero is front and center. Or I need to write one that's a book description that is got a hero and then there's also a heroine, so there's a little bit of love. Step 1, write this. Step 2, write that. Step 3, write this. And it's not like a rule book or anything, but it helps me get in the mode of what I need to be writing every time. And I created that in I don't know, it was like 30 minutes. And so now I've been using that to rewrite my book descriptions for my Amazon ads. So as I'm working on Amazon ads, there's a few series where I need to retool the book description for book 1 or that sort of thing. And so I've been using that to great effect. And this tool has helped me take my conversion rate, meaning how many clicks does it take to get a sale. Let me give you an example. So my poetry collection, I have a poetry collection called Android Poems, and it's sold maybe 5 copies since 2018, since I published it. And one of those copies was me. It hasn't sold very much. It just kind of is what it is. And I used this builder, and I actually I found some best-selling poetry collections, and I figured out what they were doing, and I broke that into a series of steps. And I ran Android Poems through this tool, and I started running ads toward Android Poems. And when you talk about conversion rates, I always have to make sure I explain this because I always have to remember there's people that don't know what this is. When you're doing Amazon advertising, or any advertising for that matter, what you want to measure is how many clicks it takes to get to a sale. So if you have a conversion rate of 1 in 10, that means that on average, for every 10 clicks, you're getting 1 sale. If you have a conversion rate of 1 in 35, that means on average, it's taking you 35 clicks to get a sale. Now, naturally, you want you want your conversion rate to be as low as possible, right? Because if you're spending money on clicks, you're spending 35 cents or 45 cents per click, you do the math and that starts to add up the more clicks it takes to get to a sale. And so Android Poems basically had a conversion rate of 0 because I wasn't selling anything. But when I started running ads to it for the first time, the conversion rate was like 1 in 45 or some crazy number like that. It was a lot, so 45 cents times 35 cents or 45 clicks times 35 cents, you do the math on that and you start to lose money. Even if you do sell some books, you're losing money because the money you're spending is more than the money you're making. So using this tool, I actually took Android Poems from a 1 in 35-ish or 1 in 45 conversion rate down to about a 1 in 14 conversion rate. So basically, I got it to a point where it was profitable because almost all the people that were buying Android Poems were buying the paperback. And so that has a higher royalty naturally. So, 1 in 14 basically got me to a point where it was making a nice little tidy profit every month. And that was because of the copywriting tool. All right. So I did that with a lot of my series. I'm starting to see some benefits from it. And that was a simple, quick and dirty tool that I could use and, that I could create in 30 minutes. All right. So that was a major success because I think the biggest problem, and maybe there's some folks out there that can relate to this. You write your book, you spend all of this time writing your book, and then you realize, oh crap, I need to write a blurb. And so then, you rush to write a blurb real quick before you publish it and you throw it up as an afterthought. And of course, it's not going to be very effective. Right. And so how do I make sure that I don't fall into that, oh crap, I got to write a book description mentality? And how can I make sure that the book descriptions I'm writing are consistent every single time? I think that's a goal that everyone should shoot for. Just my personal opinion. All right. So that was the second thing that was pretty successful for me. And then I hinted at it, Amazon ads. Amazon ads is not the only way to advertise your books, and I recognize that. You guys know that I'm a wide author. I've only got one book in Kindle Unlimited right now. I probably will have a couple more in 2021, but for the most part, over 95%, 96, 97% of my books are not exclusive to Amazon. But Amazon ads, I thought, was a smart way to kind of dip my toe into pay-per-click advertising, learn how to get really good at it so I can maximize my income on Amazon. And then I can start moving to Facebook and BookBub ads and YouTube ads and things like that. And I can use a lot of the same principles. All right, so Amazon ads worked really well for me. I started November 15th-ish. And in the 6, 7, 8 weeks since I've been working on it, or actually it's been 4 or 5 weeks. In the 4 to 5 weeks, it started off really bad. Like I made a bunch of ads. I think I created over 200 ads. Might have even been more than that. 200 ads with a budget of $5 a day. You do the math on that. But Amazon doesn't spend your money. They just don't. It's not really that expensive. But I created a lot of ads, and all those ads were losing me money in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Like really bad, like to the point where I was spending and just losing money, and it was a pretty painful experience, but I stuck it out. I held out, and I followed a lot of the techniques that Brian Cohen talks about in his Amazon ad school. And what ended up happening is now I've got a streak where I've had 12 profitable days of Amazon ads, and December is going to be a pretty good month. And the really cool thing was I ran ads to books that I had never advertised before. So I think I ran books to 7 or 8 books that I had never advertised before. And out of those, I think about 5 are now profitable and are turning reliable sales consistently week in and week out. And I've improved my income as a result of that. It's really not anything significant, but over time, it makes a big difference when you've got, 5 of your properties that were, selling here and there, not doing terribly well, but now are giving you reliable sales every month. I think that's a beautiful thing. And as I continue to write more books, I now can use the techniques that worked on a lot of these books, and I can carry them over to new titles that are going to have the benefit of the Amazon algorithms. And so I can really start doing some damage on the first day or first 90 days. So I consider it a win. I consider it a really big win. And it was something that, it cost me some money to I had to lose some money on ads in order to get to this point, because every click you get is data, and you get data, you figure out what books are similar to yours, what customers are actually clicking on, where they're coming from. And I don't consider the money that I lost a loss, in that it helped me get to this point where I'm now running profitable ads, and I'm making more money than I was making before. And that is that's a really cool thing. But I think when I talk to people about Amazon ads, they're always a little leery because they're like, I don't really know because, one, I don't know anything about this pay-per-click advertising stuff, or maybe I've done it in the past and it doesn't really work. And I get it, but there is a technique that you can use that, hopefully will work for you. And I would highly recommend Brian Cohen's Amazon Ad School. Has definitely paid for itself. I was a little nervous when I bought it, like January of last year, because I was like, I don't know if I can afford this. It's a lot of money to spend on something that I don't know is really going to work, but it did. And so I would highly recommend it. All right. So, and then the last thing, or the last two things that I did with Amnesia Mode that were very successful for me was I tested all the things that I learned from copywriting, and I applied for a TED Talk. So I found out that TED was coming to Des Moines, where I live, and I still haven't heard back from him yet, but I took all the copywriting knowledge and I had to come up with a pitch. So I had to pitch, and I had to create a video that pitched the topic, and I had to write some copy in the application that hopefully will hook them. And so, so I haven't heard back. I get the sense that it's probably going to be a no, because they said that folks would find out by December 18th, and I haven't heard anything yet, and it's like December 20th. So, maybe they're running behind. There's a couple days left before Christmas. Maybe it'll be a nice Christmas surprise to find out. But either way, it's not a big deal if I don't get it. I'm just proud of myself for doing it, and I thought it was a great way to stretch myself and apply all the things that I learned from Amnesia Mode. So I consider that a win. And then also implementing direct sales onto my website. So I found out that there's a small part of my community that will buy books from me directly, which is really, really cool. It's awesome to know that you've got people in your community that will support you in that way. And so turning that on and loading in my books to it and allowing people to buy has been great. I mean, it's not anything crazy, but that is something that has also helped to improve my income, while also providing some value for the people that follow me and the people that want to support me in that way. All right, so that's Amnesia Mode. I consider it a success. I'm happy I did it. I'm glad that I went through it, and maybe there's a few things that you learned along the way, namely, maybe on copywriting and Amazon ads and all that good stuff. But I highly recommend maybe even you trying some of the things that I just talked about. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the next challenge. So last week I talked about the challenge. For those of you who didn't hear it, in a nutshell, essentially what I'm doing is I am writing a new urban fantasy series, but there's a twist. I am going to be dictating this urban fantasy series into Dragon, and I'm going to be doing that in one draft, and I'm going to be writing that story into the dark, meaning have no idea what's going to happen, and the final kicker is I'm going to be dictating in one draft into the dark on an exercise bike. And I can only write this book while I am on the exercise bike because I'm fat and I need to lose weight. So this is going to be an interesting challenge, right? How long is it going to take me? I have no idea. How is this story going to start? I only have a very faint idea of how it's going to start. And so over the past week, I have been trying to figure out some of the logistics. But the big thing that I've been working on is research. So I can't share what the story is going to be about yet, other than it will be an urban fantasy and the main character will be a male. That's really all I can share right now until more things kind of come into play. But I've been doing a lot of research because this particular character has a unique skill. And I've been doing a lot of research on that, and I've been reading a lot of books, watching a lot of YouTube videos. I was even able to find some documentaries on this particular skill that my character has, and those are very helpful. I was even able to find some scientific journals and scientific articles that were free to the public. The hard thing with scientific articles, if you've ever had to look for them, is just getting access to them, because a lot of times they're behind a paywall or only academics can get them. But actually I was able to find a fair amount of scientific articles that were from pretty respectable universities. And then I was able to find a world-renowned, I don't know if I guess you call him an expert. Right? This guy is an expert. He's the only one in the world that knows about this particular topic. well, he's not the only one, but people flock to see him. He's really the only person one of the few people that has this skill. And he's amazing. This guy's a genius. And he actually has a lot of YouTube videos that I was able to watch. And he wrote a book that I was able to buy through a wildlife conservation company. So I was able to support a really cool nonprofit and buy his really academic book at a reduced rate. And that's coming. So this book is like the book that everyone in this field buys to read and understand how this guy approaches things, because he is that world renowned. And so that was really, really cool. And I found some really cool websites. And so I've been doing a lot of research over the past week. And the big thing with research is, and this is my big thing. I don't know if this is other people's big thing, but this is my big thing with research, is how do you balance what you're researching versus the time you're spending researching, right? Because you could spend, let's just say you could spend 18 months researching your novel, but out of that 18 months, do you hit a point of diminishing returns? I mean, okay, cool, you spent 18 months researching this, but could you have easily gotten everything you needed to get to start writing at 4 months or 5 months? I don't know what the answer is, right? But that's always been a thing for me, because one of the big problems I've always had with research, and I say this as somebody who's written, I think it's like over 30 novels. So I've done my fair share of research. The problem that I always come across with research is it's almost like drinking through a fire hose. First off, what do you research? Second, what in this research can you actually use? Because I think in the past, what I've always done, and I think it has worked to a varying degree, but I think it's been really inefficient, is that I have read a lot of stuff, gone through a lot of resources, but then I ended up getting and gathering and collecting a lot of research that I ultimately never used. And that always bothered me a lot, because it's like, okay, I just spent however much time I spent doing research for this novel, and out of all the stuff that I researched, maybe I only use like 5% of it. And so it's like that other 95% just gets thrown in the garbage. And as somebody who I'm an efficiency guy, I that bothers me. Now it's true that some of that research did color what I was looking into. It had some benefit, but if I'm only using 5% of it, that's really not useful. So it's like, okay, if I know I'm only going to use 5% of it, if I could go back in time, what would I have done differently to get to that 5% as quickly as possible, and then ignored everything else? Or how could I have gone through and gotten to what I was going to use, as opposed to just soaking in all this information and then not using very much of it at all? So in other words, how can you make your research more efficient? That's my big thing. Because I don't like wasting time, and you guys know that's just I don't like wasting time. So there were a few things that I did this time that were a little bit different with researching that I thought were very, very helpful, and I felt like I came out of this with a very well-researched novel. Now, readers will ultimately decide that, but I feel really, really good about what I've got. So what did I do to get there? And one of the questions that I was always asking throughout the research was, can I use this in the novel? And I had to be really ruthless about that question. Can I use this in a novel? Is what I'm looking at right now going to be useful to me, meaning I can take it and put it on the page, or I can take it and use that as a way to help readers get inside the head of the character? If the answer to that was yes, then I put all my time and energy into dissecting the article or the video or the book or whatever it was, and learning everything I could, soaking it up like a sponge. If the answer was maybe, then I still put energy into the book, but I was really looking just for the golden nuggets. So like, for example, I was looking at a scientific article just yesterday, actually, and it was a 20-page scientific article, and it was full of jargon. I'm not even going to pretend that I knew what the hell they were talking about. I mean, I understood the gist of it, but I'm just not, my brain is not wired that way because it's not my field, you know? And so I was reading it and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I feel like there's something in this article that brought me here. I just don't know what it is. And so I kind of skimmed the article, and sure enough, there was like 2 paragraphs on page 17 that were worth the price of the admission. Like, it was worth it. It was like, oh, holy crap, this is amazing. I did not know this. And I was able to take that and capture those observations as something that I can use in the book. But it required me to skim through those 20 pages in a very brisk manner to get there. All right. And if the answer is no, then just keep moving on. You know, and that's a question I had to ask myself and be very ruthless about, because I want to make sure that I'm not wasting a whole lot of time and resources going down rabbit holes that don't make sense. And then the second question that I found myself asking is, what is the golden nugget in this book or this resource? What is that one golden nugget that's like, okay, this is gold. This is something that a reader would never think about. Or this is something that's, oh, wow, man, if I put this in the story somehow, it's going to be cool. You know, like, I'm always asking that question as well. And then the next question I'm always asking is there anything in this source that will help me convey the 5 senses to the reader? So you all know, this is something I picked up from Dean Wesley Smith is using the 5 senses to ground the reader in a story. And I highly recommend checking out his courses if you're not familiar with that method. And I always think to myself, okay, this article is talking about whatever, what words are maybe it's a journalistic newspaper article or something like that, and they're interviewing people. What are some of the words that the people are using that I can kind of clue into something deeper, or is there a particular word or a particular phrase that this person is using that I probably should be using in my story when I'm describing whatever it might be, right? Is there a particular verb that people associate with an animal that ends up in the story, or is there a particular color of, that sort of thing? How can this source help me paint the picture that I want people to see in their heads? Right? I think that's important. The other side of this coin is what in this research will help me with convincing backstory or the magic system or the world building. Because when you're not doing the 5 senses, you're doing other things. So, what is it that I can use from this that can help me be more, more artistic, And these things are very useful. These questions, I think, I find them very useful in my approach when it comes to writing more realistic fiction. Even though I'm writing fantasy, I still think it's important for the elements that are real world to be convincing and to be realistic, and to make sure that you're steeping readers in that. I think that's really important. I think that's a secret to a lot of really good fantasy. And then the parts that are left to the imagination, that's where you excel and you can make stuff up and all that. But for the parts that are grounded in reality, I think that you want to make sure that you're as accurate as possible, so that readers don't say, "Hey, wait a minute, wait a minute, they don't sell that at Goodwill. What are you talking about?" That sort of thing. So, all right. And then the next question I had to ask is, what traps will this source help me avoid? So, in other words, as I read this book or this article or watch this video or this documentary, what is this teaching me that an amateur author who didn't do their research would miss? Like, what would somebody who just said, I woke up one day and I want to write this about this. And they didn't do any research, they didn't do anything. They just kind of wrote what they felt. What would they do, and how can I avoid those traps? I think that's important, because it's just easy to do. It's easy to think it's easy to assume you know something about something, and it turns out that you get it wrong when you're writing. And I learned that the hard way with one of my series. And then the last question that I always ask is, what facts and opinions am I encountering more than once? Like what are the universal truths, as you could call them. The things that you just see over and over again. You see it from Article A, you see it in Article B, you see it on a YouTube video in another way. And what are those universal facts? And what I like to do, and this is my method, is I like to take those facts. Anytime I start seeing something more than twice, I start writing that down on a separate list. And then I take that list and I literally will write everything down. And then what I do is I take that list and I evaluate it. And that list becomes rules for the world. All right. So let's say that I come across 20 different universal facts that I'm encountering in all of the different things that I'm looking at. Those things are actually reader objections. So if you get those things wrong, readers are going to be very quick to point it out. But if you get those things right and you operate under that universe that, okay, this is how you're going to approach it, and no matter what I do with the story, these are the things that I'm not going to stray from. These are the universal facts that I believe that you don't necessarily say in the novel, but the novel adheres to those facts. I think you can win a lot of points with readers that way, because then they're not going to be questioning your science, or they're not going to be questioning, whatever your physics or whatever that might be. They're instead going to be able to focus on the story because the rules that the story is operating under are familiar enough to them and adhere to the same things that they're used to. All right, now there's exceptions to that, but that's kind of what I've been doing with this. And again, I wish I could tell you what this was about because it would make a lot more sense and you'd be like, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying now, Michael. But I can't share my secret sauce yet. All right. So that's kind of what I've been doing with research. And I'm actually done. I'm almost done with the research. So if you've read any of my books, you know that I believe in two different types of research. The first type of research is what I call foundational research. And that is everything that you need to research in order to start writing the story. So let's say that you have a story that takes place in a certain city, right? Well, you would need to know about that city and where this is going to take place in the city in order to start writing the book, right? So these are the things that you need to know, either about your character, about the setting, about the overall plot, in order to start writing the story. Now, and when I say that, what I mean is to start writing the first chapter, all right? So that's the foundational research. Then there's what I call just-in-time research, meaning these are things that you don't need to start writing, but you're going to have to research them at some point when you come to them. So let's say you're writing a story and a character comes to a certain type of building. And okay, I don't know anything about, old banks. So I need to go and research, how banks were constructed and, what might be underneath them, that sort of thing. And so I call that just-in-time research. So this is stuff that you don't know that you're going to have to research until you come to it. And I think that when you break it out that way, you can make your research more efficient because when you do just-in-time research, you're only researching things that you're going to need, right? So the old bank thing, well, you're going to research that, and then whatever you find, you're going to bring it back to the story, and then you're going to keep going. You're not going to waste very much when you're doing that. Now, if you had done all your research in the beginning up front, well, there might be a ton of stuff that you look at with old banks that you never end up using because you don't know what context you're going to be working with it in the story. Or maybe the context you think you're going to be under completely changes by the time you get there. And so all that time you spent researching old banks gets wasted, right? So this is why I like this method because it's more, you're getting quality information at the time you need it, when you need it. I guess I said the same thing twice, but you understand where I'm going. Quality information, that's why I call it just-in-time research. So you got your foundational research, which is everything you need to start writing that first chapter, all right, which is less than you think. And then you got the just-in-time research, which you're going to have to start and stop more with this method, right? Because you're going to keep going, and then you're going to stop, and you're going to find something, and then you're going to go, and then you're going to stop, and you're going to find something, and you're going to go. So it is going to take you a little bit longer, but it is going to ensure that you're being more efficient and productive with your research. So anyway, that's what I've been doing this week, and I'm at a point where I'm done with my foundational research now. I did a lot of I don't even want to show you my notes. This is the most foundational research I've ever done for a book. But I know it's all going to be practical and efficient. It's all stuff I can use. But it's been a lot. And it took me about a week and a half maybe. And so now I'm ready to start writing, which I'm going to start doing probably by the next time I come on the microphone for the writer's journey. I'm going to be dictating and doing all that stuff. But I've got a few other loose ends that I'm working on right now. The big thing, I've been talking to some cover designers because I don't know what their calendar looks like, and one of the problems with cover designers is getting on their calendar. So I've been talking to a few folks, doing some research and doing some digging on folks' work that I like who are actively working in the urban fantasy genre. And I've been trading some ideas back and forth with a few of them, and we'll kind of see how that goes. And then I need to come up with a title. And then I'm going to do something a little bit different with this one than I've done in the past. So I'm going to kind of combine Beast Mode and Amnesia Mode. So what I'm going to do is after I finish the third chapter, I'm actually going to stop and I'm going to write the book description. So because basically with your book description, you really should know everything you need to know to write your book description after your first or second chapter, right? Because you know what the character type is, you know who they are, you know what the stakes are, the villain's already appeared. You kind of know all that stuff. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to write my book description. So that way it's done. I don't have to worry about it, and it should be fairly accurate. So that's something I've never done before. I'm gonna try that and just kind of see what happens. And then I've got some other little decisions to make, like in terms of just other little things. They're not really that important. They're nothing that's going to stop me from writing. But another thing that I'm kind of wrestling with, and this might be helpful to some of you, like as you think about like your book description and your first chapter. So if you look at a lot of very popular self-published books right now, their book description and the first chapter, they kind of fit each other. They're like interlocking pieces. So whatever you see in the book description is exactly what gets delivered on the first page or the first 2 pages of the novel. Now, I've always found, and this is just my experience, I've always found that I didn't do that with my early blurbs. Instead, I just talked about the story in general. But what I'm going to try to do is, what I'd like to try to do is, whatever I say in the book description is what ends up being on that first page. So that, you read the book description, okay, you read the first page, boom, boom, and then it all matches. And I did not do that with my Good Necromancer series. And the reason I didn't do that is because the way that story starts, it kind of starts in a weird way. Like it starts off with the main character basically getting his ass kicked, and then it flashes back. And it's kind of weird. It's kind of hard to do. Anyway, that's why I wasn't able to do that with that book. And I think that probably hurt my sales in a sense, because the book description in the first chapter didn't match. And so I said, okay, I learned my lesson. I'm going to try this a little bit differently with the next book. But the wrinkle is that this book actually starts with a prologue who is told in the perspective that is not the protagonist. So, okay, now here we go again. Michael, how are you going to do this differently? So what I'm thinking about doing, and again, this is just a thought, I'm just kind of talking out loud here, because the prologue takes place in the past, and it takes place through the perspective of a very important character in the story. So that's an important thing. And then the next chapter, and then it picks up with the main character. So what I'm thinking about doing is I'm actually thinking about doing 2 prologues. And I'm thinking about having the main character's prologue first, and then have the other character's prologue second, and then jump into the first chapter. So that way, if readers read the book description, they see the main character first, and they see everything that the book description tells them they're going to see, and then it jumps to the true prologue, and then it jumps to the story. I know that's extreme. That's really technical, but that's something I've been thinking about over the past couple of days because I really want to make sure that I make a dent with the first impression, And I also want to make sure that I do that in a way that does not get in the way of the story. Like I don't want to make marketing decisions that are gonna hamper what the ultimate story will end up being. And so that's just something I've been thinking about. But anyway, I'm gonna start here pretty soon. I will be doing videos on my YouTube channel. I probably will do my next Riding Power Hour on my bike. Oh, that's going to be fun. So stay tuned for that. We're going to start those back up again in January. And yeah, so anyway, that's all I got for this week. Hope you're doing great. For those of you, I hope that you have a Merry Christmas, happy holiday, and you take some time to celebrate with your family, and please be safe. I know some of you are probably going to travel, just be safe, follow all the guidelines. And I've been very grateful for all of you this past year for listening to me ramble, talking about what it means to be behind the scenes of a working writer. And I certainly appreciate each and every one of you. So have a wonderful week. I will talk to you next week. Peace. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.